The Great Hall of the Galactic Council was older than most civilizations. Its walls held the memories of 12,000 cycles of peace, war, and everything in between. 4,312 species had joined the Council over those long years. Each one had followed the same path: first contact, cultural exchange, treaty negotiations, integration. It was clean, it was simple, it had never failed. Until humanity. Ambassador of the collective stood before the High Council, his bioluminescent fronds pulsing with colors that showed his confusion. He had served the Council for 300 cycles. He had welcomed dozens of new species into the fold. He had never faced anything like this. "Honored Council members," he began, his voice carrying through the vast chamber. "I bring troubling news regarding the species we have contacted, the beings who call themselves humans." High Counselor leaned forward on his throne of living crystal. He was ancient even by Council standards. His body was more machine than flesh now, kept alive by technologies that younger races could not understand. In all his long years, he had seen every kind of first contact imaginable. "Speak, Ambassador," he said. "What troubles you about these humans?" Franz flickered with embarrassment. "They have refused to negotiate, High Counselor. They will not sign the Integration Codex." A murmur passed through the assembled representatives. Thousands of alien eyes turned toward the ambassador. Such a thing had never happened before. "Explain," commanded. Took a deep breath and began his report. 3 months ago, the human vessel Wanderer had crossed into Council-monitored space. It was a small ship by galactic standards. Its technology was primitive. Chemical engines, basic faster-than-light drives, no particle shields worth mentioning. The humans aboard numbered only 47. Following standard protocol, had assembled a delegation of 17 species. They had traveled to meet the humans carrying the standard integration codex. This document was sacred to the Council. It outlined everything a new species must agree to in order to receive protection and membership: tribute rates, territorial concessions, technology sharing requirements, military limitations. Every species signed it. There was no other choice. The humans had welcomed the delegation aboard their small ship. Their captain was a woman named. She had dark hair streaked with gray and eyes that seemed to look right through you. She smiled when she greeted the ambassadors. She shook their hands or tentacles or whatever appendages they offered. She served them a bitter brown liquid called coffee. Then she listened as explained the integration codex. She asked questions, intelligent questions. She took notes on a small electronic device. Her crew listened carefully. When finished his presentation, Captain thanked him politely. She said she appreciated his time and effort. She said the coffee was a gift from Earth. Then she said 4 words that still haunted the ambassador. "We'll get back to you." They never did. The Council sent another delegation, then another. 14 groups of ambassadors visited humanity over the following months. Each one returned with the same report. The humans were friendly. They offered food and drinks. They gave tour of their ships and stations. They engaged in something called small talk, which seemed to be conversation about nothing important. They laughed easily and asked many questions about other species. But they would not sign, they would not negotiate, they simply refused. "This is unprecedented," said Representative OK of the Empire. His massive form shifted in his specially designed seat. "No species has ever refused the Codex. Do these humans not understand their situation?" "They understand perfectly," replied. "That is what concerns me most. They know they are technologically inferior. They know they have no allies. They know the dangers that exist in this galaxy, and still they refuse." "Perhaps they are simply stupid," suggested Representative Na of the collective mind. Her voice came from 1,000 tiny mouths speaking in perfect unison. Young species often fail to grasp the realities of galactic politics. No, said firmly. I have spoken with their leaders many times. They are not stupid. They are something else, something I do not have words for. High Counselor raised one withered hand for silence. The chamber fell quiet immediately. Tell us more about these humans, Ambassador. What have you learned of their nature? Organized his thoughts carefully. They are a curious species, High Counselor. They evolved on a world they call Earth, a small planet, harsh conditions. Many of their early civilizations destroyed each other in wars fought over resources, ideology, and sometimes nothing at all. Violent then, OK observed, like the Eth. Yes and no, replied. They are capable of great violence. Their history is filled with it, but they are also capable of great sacrifice. Their stories are filled with individuals who died for causes greater than themselves. They seem to value something they call principle above their own survival. That is irrational, Na said. Yes, agreed. And yet it has allowed them to survive and even thrive on their hostile world. They are a species of contradictions. They fear death but run toward danger. They love peace but excel at war. They value logic but make decisions based on emotion. The council chamber was silent as the representatives considered this information. Finally, High Counselor spoke. What do they want, Ambassador? Every species wants something. What do the humans demand in exchange for signing the codex? Franz dimmed with uncertainty. They want only one thing, High Counselor. They want to be treated as equals. Laughter rippled through the chamber. The very idea was absurd. Equality was earned through power, through technological advancement, through thousands of cycles of service to the council. A young species with primitive technology demanding equal status. It was laughable. But did not laugh, neither did High Counselor. There is something else you should know, the ambassador continued. The hegemony of Eth has claimed the region of space where humanity lives. They have already begun moving their fleets into position. The laughter stopped. The Eth were the Council's nightmare. They had conquered 37 species. They enslaved the useful ones and exterminated the rest. The Council tolerated them only because fighting them would cost too much. Without Council protection, OK said slowly, the humans will be destroyed. Yes, agreed. I have told them this many times. I have shown them recordings of what the Eth do to conquered species. I have explained in detail the horrors that await them. And still they refuse to sign. Franz pulsed with a color none of them had ever seen from him before. It took a moment for them to recognize it. Fear. They know exactly what is coming, he said quietly. And they have told me in very clear terms that they would rather die free than live as servants. They call it a matter of principle. High Counselor stared at the ambassador for a long moment. Then he turned to face the assembled council. In 12,000 cycles, he said slowly, no species has ever told us no. Perhaps it is time we learned why. The Intelligence Bureau of the Galactic Council was the most advanced information-gathering organization in known space. They had files on every species, every world, every ship that moved through the galaxy. Their analysts could predict the rise and fall of civilizations with mathematical precision. They had no idea what to make of humanity. Director Al stood before the assembled intelligence chiefs, her compound eyes scanning the data streams that floated in the air around her. She was a species known for their cold logic and perfect memory. In 200 cycles of service, she had never encountered a puzzle she could not solve. Until now. Let me summarize what we know, she began. Humanity is a young species. They achieved faster-than-light travel only 3 centuries ago. Their technology is primitive by our standards. Their military forces are small. Their population is limited to 1 and a handful of colonies. She waved a limb and new data appeared. By every standard measurement, they should be desperate for council protection. They face the Eth hegemony, one of the most brutal forces in the galaxy. They have no allies, no advanced weapons, no defensive capabilities worth mentioning. And yet they refuse to negotiate, said Chief Analyst OK. Why? Director Al pulled up another set of data. We have intercepted and analyzed thousands of human communications. Their language is relatively simple, but it contains concepts that our translation systems struggle to process. Words appeared in the air: stubbornness, spite, pride, principle, dignity, freedom. These terms appear repeatedly in their communications, Al continued. They seem to be core values for this species, but our analysts cannot fully understand their meaning. The concepts do not translate cleanly into any known language. What is spite? OK asked. Al's compound eyes flickered with frustration. As near as we can determine, spite is the act of harming oneself in order to harm another, or refusing a beneficial arrangement simply because one dislikes the terms. That is irrational. Yes, and yet humans seem to consider it a virtue. The intelligence chiefs exchanged confused looks. No rational species would value self-harm. It went against every principle of survival. There is more, Al said. We have studied human history extensively. Their past is filled with conflicts where they fought against impossible odds, not because they could win, but because they believed the fight itself had value. They have a phrase for this. They call it dying with honor. The Eth will give them plenty of opportunity for that, someone muttered. Al ignored the comment. We have also noticed something unusual about their military organization. Despite their technological limitations, their ships move with remarkable coordination. Their commanders adapt to changing situations faster than our models predicted, and their soldiers display a willingness to sacrifice themselves that exceeds any species in our database. Suicide attacks? OK asked. Sometimes, but not always. It is more accurate to say they are willing to accept death as a price for achieving their objectives. They do not seek death, but they do not flee from it either. Director Al pulled up one final piece of data. There is one more thing. We intercepted a transmission from the human admiral who commands their fleet. His name is Cole. He was speaking to his officers about the coming conflict with the Eth. She played the recording. The human's voice was calm and steady. They think we're weak because our ships are slow and our weapons are old. They think we'll break because we're outnumbered. They don't understand something important. We're not fighting because we think we can win. We're fighting because some things are more important than winning. Some things are worth dying for. The recording ended. The chamber was silent. I do not understand, OK said finally. What could possibly be more important than survival? Al had no answer. 2 days later, Ambassador requested a private meeting with Admiral Cole. The human commander agreed to receive him aboard Earth's main orbital station. The station was small by galactic standards. Its metal corridors were narrow, its systems basic, but noticed something as he walked through it. The humans he passed looked at him without fear. They nodded politely, some even smiled, but none of them showed the submission he was used to seeing in younger species. Admiral Cole's office was sparse. A desk, 2 chairs, a window that looked out at the stars. The Admiral himself was old by human standards, his hair white, his face lined with age, but his eyes were sharp and clear. He poured 2 glasses of an amber liquid and offered one to the ambassador. Whiskey, Cole explained. An Earth tradition. We drink it when we have difficult conversations. Accepted the glass but did not drink. His biology could not process human alcohol. Admiral, I have come to make one final appeal. The Eth are coming. You must understand what this means. I understand perfectly. They have destroyed 37 species. They take slaves. They commit atrocities that I cannot describe. If you do not accept council protection, your people will suffer horribly. Cole took a sip of his whiskey. We've read the Integration Codex, Ambassador, all 4,000 pages of it. Do you know what it asks us to give up? The terms are standard for species at your level of development. Our outer colonies, 40% of our mineral rights, all weapons research, the right to build ships above a certain size, the right to make our own military decisions. Cole set down his glass. In exchange, you'll protect us, keep us safe, make sure nothing bad happens to us. Yes, this is the arrangement. Ambassador, we have a word for that arrangement. We call it slavery. Franz pulsed with frustration. It is not slavery, it is protection. The Council has kept peace for 12,000 cycles. We have prevented wars, stopped genocides, maintained order. The system works. For you, Cole said quietly. It works for you, for the species at the top, but we've looked at your records, Ambassador. We've seen what happens to species who sign the Codex. They stagnate. They decline. They forget how to stand on their own feet. Eventually, they forget they ever could. That is not true. Isn't it? When was the last time a protected species developed new technology? When was the last time one of them expanded their territory? When was the last time any of them did anything except follow council orders? Had no answer. The question had never occurred to him. Cole leaned forward. We're not refusing because we're stupid, Ambassador. We're refusing because we've seen this before, not in space but on our own world. Powerful nations offering protection to weaker ones. It always ends the same way. The weak become weaker, the strong become stronger, and eventually the protected realize they've traded their freedom for a cage. Then what do you want? Demanded. If you will not accept our protection, what do you want? Admiral Cole's eyes were steady. We want to be treated as equals, full membership, no tribute, no concessions, a seat at the table, not a place on the floor. That is impossible. You have not earned such status. Then we'll earn it. How? By dying at the hands of the Ith. Cole finished his whiskey. If that's what it takes, Ambassador, my people have a long history of fighting for things other species consider worthless. Freedom, dignity, the right to make our own choices. We've bled for those things. We've died for them, and we've learned something important. What? That living on your knees isn't really living at all. Stared at the old human. He had met many species in his long career, proud ones, fierce ones, stubborn ones, but he had never met one like this. One that seemed genuinely willing to die rather than accept survival on someone else's terms. The Ith will come, he said finally. We know. They will show no mercy. We know that too. Rose to leave. At the door he paused. For what it is worth, Admiral, I hope you survive. I think the galaxy would be without your species in it. Cole smiled. It was a sad smile, but there was steel beneath it. Thank you, Ambassador, but don't mourn for us yet. We have a few surprises left. The Ith fleet emerged from faster-than-light travel at the edge of human space on a Tuesday morning. Earth time meant nothing to them, but the humans would remember the day forever. 200 warships. Each one was larger than anything humanity had ever built. Their hulls were black as the void between stars, covered with weapons that could crack planets open like eggs. At their center flew the flagship of Supreme Commander X, a vessel so massive it had its own gravity field. The Ith were not a subtle species. They had risen to power through brute force and terror. They did not negotiate. They did not compromise. They conquered, and those who survived their conquest wished they had not. X broadcast his ultimatum on every frequency. His image appeared on screens across human space. He was enormous even by Ith standards, his 4 arms thick with muscle, his face a mass of scars from battles fought and won. When he spoke, his voice carried the weight of 37 conquered civilizations. Humans, you have 1 cycle to surrender unconditionally, disable your weapons, open your stations, present your leaders for judgment. Any resistance will be punished. Any delay will be punished. Your species will serve the hegemony or it will cease to exist. This is not a negotiation. This is a fact. The transmission ended. The Galactic Council watched from a safe distance. They had positioned observation vessels just outside the conflict zone, their sensors recording everything. High Counselor had ordered full documentation of the coming battle. "This will serve as a lesson," he had told the other council members. "Future species must understand the cost of refusing integration. The humans chose this fate. Let their destruction be a warning to others." Some council members had objected. They argued that the council should intervene, should protect humanity despite their refusal to sign the codex, but had overruled them. The law was clear. Only member species received protection. The humans had made their choice. Now they would face the consequences. On the human colony world of New Helsinki, a young communications officer named David sat at his console and watched the ETH ultimatum play out on his screen. He was 23 years old. He had joined the Colonial Communications Corps because he liked talking to people and because the pay was decent. He had never expected to witness the end of his species. Around him, his colleagues worked in grim silence. Some were crying quietly. Others stared at their screens with blank expressions. The colony had started evacuation procedures, but everyone knew there was nowhere to run. The ETH were faster than anything humanity had. If they wanted to chase down fleeing civilians, they would. David looked at his console. He had access to the main communications array. With a few keystrokes, he could broadcast on any frequency in the system, including the one the ETH were using. He thought about his parents back on Earth, his sister on Mars, his girlfriend who worked on the orbital shipyards. He thought about all the people he would never see again. Then he thought about what his grandfather had told him once. The old man had grown up in Lagos during a time of great trouble. He had seen war and violence and hardship, but he had also seen his people stand up and fight for their freedom. "Sometimes," his grandfather had said, "the only thing you can control is how you face the end. Do you face it standing or do you face it on your knees? That choice is always yours." David made his choice. His fingers moved across the console. He bypassed the security protocols. He locked onto the ETH flagship's communication frequency, and then he opened his mouth and spoke. "Hey, yeah, you, big scary alien with the ultimatum, got a minute?" On the ETH flagship, X stared at his communication screen in confusion. A human face had appeared on it, young, dark-skinned, smiling in a way that made no sense given the circumstances. "What is this?" the Supreme Commander demanded. "Who dares address me?" "My name is David. I'm a communications officer on New Helsinki. Nobody important, but I've got a question for you." "You waste my time, insect." "Just one question, I promise. Have you ever heard of a place called Thermopylae?" X's massive brow furrowed. "No." "How about the Alamo, Stalingrad, Masada?" "No, that's okay. Most species haven't. They're places on our world where people fought against impossible odds, not because they could win, because they believed some things were worth dying for." "Your history does not interest me." "It should." David leaned closer to his camera. "See, here's the thing about humans. We're not brave because we don't know what fear is. We're brave because we've spent our entire history learning that some things matter more than survival. You can kill us. You probably will, but we've done the math and we've decided that living on our knees isn't living at all." X laughed. It was a horrible sound, like rocks grinding together. Bold words from a species that will be extinct within a cycle. "Maybe, but here's something else you should know. While you've been giving speeches and making ultimatums, our fleet has been moving into position. We knew you were coming before you arrived. We've been preparing for months, and we're not going to make this easy for you." The Supreme Commander's amusement faded. His tactical officers were checking their sensors. What they found disturbed them. Human ships were everywhere, hidden in asteroid fields, lurking behind moons, scattered across the system in positions that made no tactical sense by ETH standards. They were small and primitive, but there were far more of them than intelligence had suggested. "You cannot defeat us," X growled. "Your ships are inferior, your weapons are weak, you have no chance." "Probably not," David agreed. "But that's not the point. The point is that you're going to pay a price for every system you take, every planet you conquer, every human you kill. We're going to make you bleed for it. And when it's over, win or lose, the galaxy is going to know that humanity didn't go quietly." He paused and smiled again. It was not a friendly smile. "One more thing, you asked us to surrender. Here's our official response." David transmitted 2 words. The ETH translation systems processed them and displayed the result on X's screen. "Come get SOME." The transmission ended. On the Council observation vessels, the analysts were recording everything. They noted that human fleet movements had begun before the ETH even arrived. They noted the unusual positioning of human ships. They noted the communications traffic between human vessels, which was filled with references they did not understand. References to ancient battles, songs about fighting and dying, messages between loved ones that ended with promises to make the enemy pay. "They knew this was coming," one analyst said quietly. "They prepared for it." "Why?" another asked. "They cannot win. Why fight a battle they know they will lose?" High Counselor watched the data streams in silence. He remembered reports. He remembered the words that did not translate: spite, pride, principle. "Because they are human," he said softly, "and apparently that means something." In the ETH fleet, Supreme Commander X issued his orders. The attack would begin immediately. No more waiting. No more ultimatums. These humans needed to learn their place. As his ships began to move, he felt something he had not felt in a very long time. Not fear exactly, but something close to it. A sense that perhaps this battle would not be as simple as he had expected. He pushed the feeling aside. They were humans, primitive, weak, outnumbered. What could they possibly do? The Battle of the Helios Corridor began at dawn on Earth. Not that dawn meant anything in the darkness of space, but humans kept track of such things. They liked to remember exactly when important events happened. Supreme Commander X expected the battle to last a few hours. Human ships were slow and fragile. Their weapons were primitive. His fleet had crushed larger forces in less time. This would be quick and brutal, a demonstration of ETH superiority that would echo through the galaxy. The battle lasted 11 days. On the first day, the ETH advanced in their standard formation. A massive wall of warships, weapons blazing, sweeping through space like a tide of destruction. They expected the humans to break and run. Every other species had. The humans did not run. Instead, they fell back into the asteroid fields of the outer system. The ETH followed, confident in their superior sensors and weapons. They found the humans waiting for them among the rocks. What followed was chaos. Human ships darted between asteroids like fish in a reef. They struck from unexpected angles, fired quick bursts, then disappeared before the ETH could target them. Their weapons were weak, but they knew exactly where to aim. Engine ports, sensor arrays, communication dishes. They did not try to destroy the massive warships. They tried to blind and cripple them. The ETH had never encountered tactics like these. They called it cowardice. The humans called it guerrilla warfare. By the end of the first day, the ETH had lost 12 ships, not destroyed, but damaged badly enough that they could not fight effectively. Human losses were higher in numbers but lower in proportion, and the advance had stalled. On the third day, the ETH adapted. They spread out, using their numbers to surround the asteroid fields. They brought in specialized hunting ships designed to track small targets. They would flush the humans out and crush them in open space. The humans adapted faster. When the ETH hunting ships entered the asteroid fields, they found debris waiting for them. Human vessels had sacrificed themselves, detonating their reactors to create clouds of shrapnel that blinded sensors and tore through hulls. The hunting ships flew into traps they could not see. Meanwhile, other human ships had slipped past the ETH lines. They attacked supply vessels. They hit communication relays. They appeared where they were not expected and vanished before they could be caught. And all the time, they broadcast music. The ETH had never experienced anything like it. Human music filled every frequency, drums pounding, voices singing, strange rhythms that seemed to pulse with anger and defiance. The ETH communication officers could not filter it out. It jammed their channels and confused their crews. "What is this noise?" X demanded. His analysts studied the transmissions. "It appears to be a form of psychological warfare, Supreme Commander. The humans call it rock and roll." On the 7th day, the tide began to turn against humanity. The ETH had taken terrible losses, but they had numbers on their side. Human ships were running out of ammunition, running out of fuel, running out of places to hide. The asteroid fields were being cleared systematically. Soon there would be nowhere left to run. That was when the cruiser Defiance made its last stand. Captain was 42 years old. She had served in the human fleet for 20 years. She had a daughter back on Earth, a girl named who wanted to be a pilot like her mother. When the ETH boarding parties breached her hull, knew she would never see again. Her ship was crippled, engines destroyed, weapons offline. The ETH were cutting through the bulkheads, eager to take prisoners. They wanted humans alive for questioning, for study, for worse things. Gathered her surviving crew on the bridge. There were only 11 of them left. "You all know what they'll do to us if they take us alive," she said. "I'm not going to let that happen. The reactor is damaged but not destroyed. If I overload it manually, it will take out every ship within 1,000 kilometers. 3 ETH destroyers are that close." Her crew looked at her. Some were crying, some were calm, all of them understood. "Anyone who wants to take an escape pod, do it now," continued. "No judgment. This is my choice, not yours." No one moved. "Then let's make this count," said. She opened a channel to Earth. Her voice was steady. "This is Captain of the cruiser Defiance. We are about to be boarded. We have chosen not to be taken alive. Tell my daughter I loved her. Tell her I stayed." She closed the channel and walked to the reactor controls. The explosion lit up space for 1,000,000 kilometers. 3 ETH destroyers vanished in an instant. The shockwave damaged 5 more, and across the human fleet the message spread. They heard what said, they heard her choice, and they understood. The humans fought harder after that. On the 9th day, a wing of 12 human fighters executed a mission everyone knew was suicide. They had hidden inside a derelict freighter, drifting among the debris of the battle. When the ETH flagship passed close enough, they launched. X's shields were the strongest in the fleet. They had never been breached, but 12 ships, piloting manually, flying patterns no computer could predict, slipped through the defensive fire. They struck the shield generators one after another, each pilot knowing that the fighters behind them needed their sacrifice to get through. The last pilot was a man named James Wright. He was 26 years old. He had been engaged to marry a woman named Sarah. He hit the generator that powered the flagship's forward shields and kept going, driving his fighter into the hull itself. The shields failed. Human ships that had been waiting for this moment opened fire. For the first time in the battle, their weapons found unprotected hull. The damage was not enough to destroy the flagship, but it was enough to hurt it, enough to make X feel something he had not felt in decades. Fear. On the 11th day, the Supreme Commander looked at what remained of his fleet. Of 200 warships, only 34 could still fight. The rest were destroyed, crippled, or retreating without orders. His flagship was damaged. His crews were exhausted and frightened. The humans were still fighting. They had lost more than the ETH in absolute numbers. Their fleet was shattered, but they kept coming. Every time he destroyed a ship, another appeared. Every time he took a position, they counterattacked. They would not stop. They would not surrender. They would not break. For the first time in his long career, X ordered a retreat. The Galactic Council observers recorded everything. They watched the ETH fleet withdraw. They watched the human survivors gather their wounded and count their dead. They watched Admiral Cole broadcast a message to his people. "We're still here," he said. His voice was hoarse with exhaustion. "We paid a terrible price, but we're still here. And they know now that we will never stop fighting. Never." The observers transmitted their recordings to the council. They added their own analysis, their own observations, but they had no words for what they had witnessed. High Counselor watched the footage in silence. Around him, the council members sat in stunned disbelief. 60,000 dead, someone said. The humans lost 60,000 people. And the ETH lost more, replied quietly. In proportion, the humans won, decisively. How? Na asked. How did they do this? They should have been destroyed in hours. Thought about everything he had learned about humanity, their history, their values, their strange concepts of honor and sacrifice and spite. They did it, he said slowly, because they were willing to pay any price for what they believed in, and that is something we have forgotten how to do. 3 weeks after the Battle of the Helios Corridor, High Counselor did something no leader of the Galactic Council had ever done in 12,000 cycles of recorded history. He traveled to Earth alone. No delegation, no guards, no fleet of ships to demonstrate council power. Just one ancient being in a small diplomatic vessel, making the journey to a world that had changed everything he thought he knew. The humans could have refused to receive him. After what the council had done, watching from safety while humanity fought and died, they had every right to be angry. But Admiral Cole agreed to meet with him. That was the first surprise. The second surprise was where the meeting took place. Had expected to be received in some government building, a place of power and authority. Instead, Cole asked him to come to a hospital, the largest medical facility on Earth's orbital stations, where thousands of wounded soldiers were recovering from the battle. The High Counselor walked through corridors filled with injured humans. He saw missing limbs, burned faces, broken bodies. He saw young people who would carry scars for the rest of their lives. He saw old people who had come out of retirement to fight and had paid the price. And everywhere he went, they looked at him, not with hatred, not with anger, just with quiet acknowledgement. They knew who he was. They knew what the council had done, and they had decided not to waste energy on bitterness. He found Admiral Cole in a recovery ward, sitting beside the bed of a young pilot who had lost both legs in the battle. The Admiral was holding the young man's hand and talking quietly. When he saw, he finished his conversation, squeezed the pilot's shoulder and stood. High Counselor, thank you for coming. You asked me to come here, said, to this place. Why? Cole led him to a window that looked out at the stars. Because I wanted you to see what your integration codex would have cost us. Not the ships or the stations or the colonies, the people, the ones who chose to fight rather than live as servants. 60,000 dead, said softly. I have read the reports. 63,412. Cole's voice was heavy. I know every number. I've read every name. Many of them were friends. And yet you won. Cole turned to face him. His eyes were red from lack of sleep, from grief, from the weight of command. We survived, High Counselor. That's not the same as winning. The ETH will come back. They'll rebuild their fleet. They'll want revenge. We bought ourselves time, nothing more. Perhaps not. Reached into his robe and pulled out a data crystal. The council has been discussing the situation. What happened here has caused much debate among the member species. Many of them watched the battle. They saw what humanity did, what humanity sacrificed. And they are asking questions they have never asked before. Questions about the codex, about whether the system we have built is truly the best way to maintain peace, about whether strength should be the only measure of worth. Cole took the data crystal but did not look at it. What does this mean for humanity? The High Counselor was silent for a moment. He looked out at the stars, at the damaged stations, at the debris fields that still marked the sites of the worst fighting. Then he spoke. The Council wishes to offer humanity full membership, equal status, no tribute, no concessions, a permanent seat on the High Council itself. Cole stared at him. That's impossible, you said so yourself. We haven't earned that status. I was wrong. The words came hard too. In 12,000 cycles, he had rarely admitted to being wrong about anything. In all the time I have led the Council, I believed that strength meant ships and weapons and technology. I believed that the strong had the right to rule the weak, and that the weak should be grateful for protection. I believed these things because every species I had ever encountered confirmed them. He turned to face Cole directly. Then I met humanity, a species with inferior technology, inferior numbers, inferior everything by our standards, and you defeated the Eth, not with weapons but with will. You showed me that there is a kind of strength I never understood, the strength to sacrifice everything for what you believe in. That's not strength, Cole said quietly. That's desperation. We had no choice. You had a choice, replied. You could have signed the Codex. You could have accepted our protection. You could have survived in comfort and safety as so many species have. You chose not to. You chose to fight, to die, to suffer, because you believed that freedom was worth more than survival. The High Counselor extended his withered hand in a gesture Cole recognized. It was the way greeted equals, had made the same gesture at their last meeting. Admiral Cole, humanity has taught the Galactic Council something it had forgotten, that there are things in this universe worth more than power, worth more than safety, worth more than life itself. For that lesson, we owe you a debt we can never repay. Cole looked at the hand. He thought about all the people who had died, Captain and her crew, James Wright and his squadron, 63,000 souls who had given everything so that humanity could remain free. Those people didn't die for a seat on the Council, he said finally. They died because they believed in something. If we accept your offer, we have to honor that belief. We can't become just another member species, following orders and forgetting who we are. What do you propose? Cole took the High Counselor's hand and shook it. It was a human gesture one had clearly researched. We'll join your council, but we're going to change it. That codex of yours needs to be rewritten. No more subjugation disguised as protection. No more tribute from weaker species. If the council is going to mean something, it has to mean equality, real equality, for everyone. That will take years to achieve. Decades, perhaps. Many species will resist. Then we'll convince them. Cole smiled grimly. We're good at that, we're stubborn, we don't give up, and we're very, very patient. Studied the human before him. Old, tired, grieving, and absolutely unbroken. He wondered if all humans were like this or if this one was special. Then he remembered the battle. The thousands of ordinary humans who had fought and died without hesitation. The young communications officer who had told the Eth to come and get them. The captain who had destroyed her own ship rather than surrender. No, this was not one special human. This was humanity. Very well, the High Counselor said. We will begin negotiations. Real negotiations this time, between equals. That's all we ever wanted. In the months that followed, human diplomats worked alongside council representatives to draft a new integration codex. It was not easy. 12,000 cycles of tradition did not change overnight. Many species resisted. Many argued that the old ways were better. But slowly things began to shift. Other young species looked at what humanity had done and found courage. They began to ask questions of their own. They began to demand better treatment. And one by one, the council began to change. It would take decades, perhaps centuries. There would be setbacks and failures and moments of despair, but the direction was set. The course was clear. Because on a single day, in a single battle, one small species had shown the galaxy that the measure of a civilization was not its weapons or its technology. It was its willingness to stand for what it believed in, no matter the cost. Humanity had refused to kneel, and in doing so, they had taught the universe to stand. On Earth, in the years that followed, they built a memorial to the 63,000 who died in the Battle of the Helios Corridor. It was a simple structure of black stone, with the name of every person who fell carved into its surface. At the base was a single inscription, chosen by the survivors. It read, "They stayed." And every year, on the anniversary of the battle, humans from across the colonies gathered to remember, to honor, and to remind themselves of what their ancestors had purchased with their lives. Freedom, dignity, the right to stand as equals among the stars. The galaxy would never be the same.